So Boris Johnson went to visit Scotland, and it was always going to be an unusual trip. He didn't meet Nicola Sturgeon, but he did pursue one of his favourite hobbies. He went off to visit a wind farm because climate change seems to be absolutely the top of the government's agenda. And he made a throwaway remark as he was leaving to a journalist. We can't show you a clip of it, but what he said was, and he was talking about CO2 emissions, he said, look at what we've done already. We've transitioned away from coal in my lifetime. Thanks to Margaret Thatcher, who closed so many coal mines across the country. We had a big early start, and now we're moving rapidly away from coal altogether, and that was said with a chuckle. Now, the Conservatives have a majority of 80 in Parliament, and it's because of the Red Wall. It's because of those seats in the Midlands, in the north of England, seats that have been Labour, often for decades, that went Conservative last time round. And is this comment by Boris, is it just a Borisism? Is it just a throwaway remark? Is it something we can simply laugh about? Or does it really make a difference? And there was certainly a lot of loud muttering from Northern Wall MPs saying, you can't say this in an old mining community. All it does is to bring back memories of the 80s and 90s when so many pits closed with so much hardship. And in response to it, a statement was put out from Number 10. The Prime Minister recognises the huge impact and pain closing coal mines had in communities across the UK. This government has an ambitious plan to tackle the critical issue of climate change, which includes reducing reliance on coal and other non-renewable resources. During the visit, the Prime Minister pointed to the huge progress already made in the UK transitioning away from coal and towards cleaner forms of energy, and our commitment to supporting people and industries on that transition. So it wasn't an apology, it was an explanation. So I wonder, just how much damage does this do? Is it, as I said before, a throwaway remark, a sort of short-term storm in a teacup, or is this something that is actually going to resonate in those mining communities? And if it does, can Sir Keir Starmer benefit? Can Labour reconnect with those old traditional Labour voting communities? I have to say, I think it will do damage. My view is that the Labour Party will put this on every single leaflet they deliver through the doors in mining constituencies between now and the next general election. And I'm told that some MPs in those old mining seats have been bombarded with emails. Well, let's begin. Let's go straight to a Red Wall Member of Parliament for Bishop Auckland for the Conservative Party, Deanna. How much harm does this do Boris in the Midlands and the north of England?
Well, let me just correct you right from the outset there, Nigel. We are now the blue wall. The red wall is no longer. But, my constituents are certainly not shy in sharing their views on the kind of news of the day. I know over the sort of Dominic Cummings affair, I got something like 700 or 800 emails. On this, I have had precisely 3. I have had more messages from Westminster journalists than I have from my own constituents concerned about this, which makes me think it is much more a storm in a teacup than an actual issue. I'm glad that the Prime Minister and Number 10 did come out with a statement saying they do understand the kind of impact that the mining closures had on those communities, because whilst I think a lot of the communities have moved on a long way, it's kind of no longer my dad was a miner, it's more my granddad was a miner. So those memories are kind of much less current for people and much less in the forefront of their minds. Areas like County Durham do have a really long history of mining. That mining heritage is still very apparent. Here in Bishop Auckland, we have a mining gallery, for example, which opened quite recently, just to show some of that heritage and how it's really played in County Durham. So I was pleased to see that comment from the Prime Minister. But, it was a joke at the end of the day. And I think if it was really going down badly, I'm absolutely certain my inbox would be much fuller than it is.
OK, but you did not have a pit that closed in the early 1990s. And, Deanna, maybe that's the point, because I'm wondering, Paul Embury, Labour Party member, I'm wondering, the early 90s saw the last really big round of pit closures in this country. That is still less than 30 years ago. And I think the memories are quite raw in some of those communities. So I put it to you, Paul Embury, let's just say that in some of those seats in Nottinghamshire or Yorkshire that closed in the 90s, let's just say that this comment has gone down really, really badly. Just take that hypothesis for a moment. Can Sir Keir Starmer from North London reconnect with those voters, Paul?
Well, not on the basis of just this comment. It's going to take an awful lot more for Labour to reconnect with those voters. But that doesn't make the comment from Boris Johnson any less crass and insensitive. I think this is a huge misstep by him. And frankly, for all his overtures towards the Red Wall seats, this, I think, probably shows that he really doesn't understand working class people in those communities and clearly doesn't understand the history of the miners' strike, the biggest mass strike in British history in 1984 to 85. And then, as you said, the second round of closures under Michael Heseltine in the early 90s. And I know a lot of ex-miners through the trade union movement, and the legacy of those struggles still runs very, very deep in those communities. There are even today, you can go to some streets in the East Midlands, for example, in Nottinghamshire, which was the base of the breakaway union during the strike in the 80s, the UDM, the Union of Democratic Mine Workers, so-called, and who many people in the National Union of Mine Workers saw as a traitorous group who were trying to undermine their strike. And there are people living on the same streets today, mining families, who don't speak to each other because of issues that flow from that strike. And what we need to understand, pit communities were absolutely torn apart. Pit communities were ripped apart in the 1980s, and a huge amount of suffering endured. And we saw social decay and unemployment and despair and family breakup. And to joke about that sort of thing, I think is scandalous.
Yeah, Paul, I have to say, I think that there is a complete misunderstanding in London about how deep those divisions are in many of those communities, and indeed just what long memories they have.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.